Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots. I'm one of your hosts, Katie Halper.
And I'm the other Matt Taibbi, and this is Useful Idiots Monday Morning Edition.
Yeah, Monday Morning Useful Idiots, where we bring you the worst clips from the Sunday morning shows.
Yeah, we watch those shows so that you don't have to. That's
exactly.
Our purpose.
That's
right?
our, yeah, that is our motto. Yep.
It's our raison d'etre.
Exactly. Oh, wow. Good accent.
Yeah.
I didn't know you did the R at the end that well.
Well, right. Yeah. I worked on it all weekend.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, it was worth it.
Yeah. It paid off in spades. Yeah. So, okay. The Sunday shows this weekend were basically, there's a question, where is Matt today? Matt is in an undisclosed location because Matt is basically on vacation.
Undisclosed location vacation.
Right. Yeah. I'm actually just up in my hometown in Massachusetts, but spending a couple of weeks with the fam up here. But anyway,
you kind of look like you're in a nice cupboard.
Yeah, it is cupboard-like in here, actually.
It's nice. It's bright.
Yeah, it is bright. It's brighter than my little office.
Yeah. And this is live. People are asking if it's live. Yes, indeed.
It is live. Yeah. So obviously the news shows this weekend were all about Afghanistan, because what else could they be about? Because I mean, I don't want to laugh about it. Is it funny? It's not funny, right?
No, I mean, it's super dark. But I mean, we're going to find stuff to laugh at because you got to laugh instead of cry, or do both.
Right. And there was just this flood of video that came out of Afghanistan, especially this weekend, that, I mean, a lot of these pictures are going to become iconic.
Yeah.
Similar to some other episodes in American history that obviously are evoked by these pictures.
You mean the returning vet, GI vet kissing the woman, the nurse.
Yeah, those Victorians, like a VE day.
Yeah, like that. Or the guys like eating their lunch.
Right.
Where are they?
Right.
I don't even know.
On the Empire
State Building, about, right? Is that what it is? The Empire State Building, yeah.
Yeah. Or Iwo Jima, right? Like raising.
Yeah, Iwo Jima, yeah, the flag, yeah. What else?
Yeah.
What else? What other photos are there that'll
Bobby Thompson hitting the shot heard around the world? You probably wouldn't. That's baseball.
Yeah. Paul Revere.
Yeah, Paul Revere. All the great video they had of that.
Yeah.
They always roll with that at the top of the
news. Go to the videotape, yeah. He was the shot that was heard around the. Wait, was that the thing that was heard around the world?
No, well, yes, that was the original one, but then there was another one in baseball.
No, I know, but what was the shot that Paul? I mean, whoops!
I was going to say Paul the world was at Concord, Massachusetts, Lexington.
And it was a bell.
Nope, it was I believe an actual gunshot at the bridge. If I'm mistaken, please, commenters, remember, tell me if I'm wrong about this. I'm pretty sure it was the shot that started the hostilities between the British and the Americans at Concord.
Okay, it was a shot that heard around the world that then caused Paul Revere to jump on the horse.
No, he had already jumped on the horse by that point, I think.
Well, maybe the horse ran into something, and the whole time we thought it was a shot, but it was really the horse running into something. Making a noise.
Maybe, I can't remember. My American history is pretty poor, actually. Yeah. Even though I went to school in that town, that's pretty bad. But
oh my God, you should do a video where you retrace his footsteps.
I mean, I used to get high under that bridge.
That's why you can't remember.
That's why I can't remember. So
yeah. We should do drug history or stone history or something.
Yeah, well, we've done that for a couple of
we have. Yeah.
All right, we should get to some videotape because it's pretty crazy. Okay. I guess we should start with clip number one. Matt, this is Face the Nation, and this is CBS News' Margaret Brennan interviewing David Martin, fellow correspondent, and Yeah, it's actually not the commentary that's particularly interesting. It's just the clip they're referring to. So let's go to the videotape.
The speed with which the Taliban has retaken the country seems to have taken the Biden administration completely by surprise. I want to play for you what Secretary of State Antony Blinken said to Congress just a couple of months ago about this. Take a listen.
Whatever happens in Afghanistan, if there is a significant deterioration in security, that could well happen. We've discussed this before. I don't think it's going to be something that happens from a Friday to a Monday.
And yet, that's exactly what has happened from a Friday to a Monday.
Everybody is surprised by the speed of this collapse, and I'll bet you the Taliban are just as surprised. They must be pinching themselves right now at the speed of this Afghan collapse. When President Biden made the decision in April, the absolute worst case scenario was the government would collapse within 3 to 4 months of the withdrawal. The withdrawal, for all intents and purposes, was done on July 4th, 5 weeks since then. So even the worst case was off. And then, last week started with this alarming estimate that the Capitol could be under threat in 30 days. And here we are 7 days later, and the Taliban is at the gate.
I think we can. I mean, are they kidding? So this is the part about this pattern that the United States falls into that's just so amazing. Like, so we always go into these countries that where we're not wanted, then we back some local warlord or political group that turns out to be too repressive, which increases the resistance. Then we start lying about how much progress we're making in the country. Then we start lying to ourselves about how much of the country we control. And then when it seems like every time when we finally get forced out of the country, we lie to ourselves about how much time we bought ourselves to do that withdrawal by training and preparing the local forces to take over security for us. But there had to be people on the ground who knew that this was the Taliban was just going to walk into Kabul the instant this was over, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of the people who were critical of this, right, who have politics I disagree with, were saying that.
Like who?
Max Boot.
Right.
Right. A lot of the people
they were saying that in a way, as part of an argument that we should stay.
Right. But you're right.
But even for the people who understood that it's time to go, they couldn't possibly have deceived themselves into thinking that this wasn't going to happen, could they? I mean, that's the amazing part about this whole thing.
Right. Like, does Biden actually think that? Is he delusional, or was he being dishonest, or both?
It's really. I mean, look, and the journalists
and Blinken, too, right.
For a journalist like David Martin to say everyone is surprised, like what could he possibly be surprised about at this point? This has been going on for 20 years, and every single proclamation we've made about that country has turned out to be false over and over again. And they're surprised that, the idea that there was any kind of civilian government there that was going to be faithful to the United States or fight for, to retain the quote unquote gains made there. It's just absurd, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absurd. And you'd think that they would have had better messaging around it, right? Like, well, this is going to happen, but the alternative is B. A is going to happen, but the alternative was B happening.
Right.
This is something, what always happens. It's like the cost of whatever, helping bring liberty somewhere. I mean, whatever, freedom, fries, something that they could have said to kind of justify, to kind of cut. I mean, they should have had some talking points specifically addressing this for their own like self-interested reasons.
Or they should have spent a little extra money on security to at least prevent this PR disaster.
Right.
You know, they're having to send back, what is it, 10,000 troops to lock down the airport so they can complete their snagglepuss out of the country. And if those troops are needed now, they could have been used before to, you know what I'm saying? Like it's very difficult.
Right. Yes.
That there weren't people on the ground who didn't
anticipating
know.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that double negative, but there are people who had to have known what was coming, and they had to have been telling people, like, look, this is gonna result in some all-time bad video if you don't give us some troops to at least lock down the points of exit when we do this thing. And not just like bad on the ground video, but bad video like that Blinken clip. You know, I mean, that's going to be in his obituary. That clip.
Well, no, not if it's written by the New York Times. They'll just cover up for that.
True. Yeah.
And praise him. Yeah. And let his own quote about himself or his efforts be in the sub headline.
Did you see the Times House editorial this morning?
No.
The tragedy of Afghanistan. They basically went through everything that was terrible, and they said it was just a real shame that this couldn't have been anticipated. But then they went on to make this whole argument about how, Joe Biden should at least be praised for resisting the calls to keep a counterterrorism force in country, for understanding that it was at least a lost cause, which I do agree with. But
right.
The way they turned it around into, like, we should praise Joe Biden for this, like, I don't know. Like, it's a little early. I think
it's a little early, and it wasn't done well, right? No matter what.
Yeah, I mean, it
wasn't executed well.
Yeah, there's absolutely no reason that the United States has to have this kind of catastrophe happen. It's not like we lack for the military support.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, we shouldn't have crowds of people like hanging off C-130s as they're taking off.
Awful.
So
awful. Well, it just goes to show you how like little the U.S. actually cares about the people there.
Well, that's another thing, right? I mean, you could go through the whole list of things that are horrible about these patterns of our occupations, right? Beginning with the fact that because we don't have a lot of political authority, typically we go into places where we're not wanted. There aren't a lot of people who are sort of fighting for us because they believe, but we do spend a ton of money in country, and we make very elaborate promises of security that are believed by lots and lots of people who end up working either for us or sort of in support of the mission. And then those people, as soon as things collapse, we just turn our back on them and fly out of the country, and,
right.
and they end up either shot as collaborators or whatever it is. So that's like another level of this whole thing that is a disaster.
Yeah.
But you had one show too, right?
Yeah. I just want to. This is a good comment from Phantom Esfanto. We are the friend who goes to your house unannounced and breaks all the furniture, ruins pool, and says you might want to fix that. I need to do laps. Yeah. And I also hate the discourse about how like letting Afghanistans like fight their own war, as if like they were going to do this anyway.
Right.
No, we started it. Like they're not some like moochers. They're not some like freeloaders, like having us fight the war for them.
Right. I mean, so Afghanistan is slightly different from some of these other engagements because we didn't go in there purely as a nation building exercise. There was allegedly a military reason we went in, to capture bin Laden or, get rid of Al-Qaeda. But once it became a nation building exercise, there's no reason, we just lied to everybody about that.
Right.
And then we went through this whole idea of, yeah, we're training the local forces to continue the fight for us, but it wasn't their fight. Like they're
Right.
Yeah.
Awful. I hate that. They did that with Iraq too.
Well, they do it
They
with
do it
Vietnam.
wherever. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have another clip that's related to this very same subject. So let's see if we could go to Mr. Jake Tapper.
Blinken, thanks so much for joining us. Take a listen to what President Biden was saying less
State
than
of
6
the
weeks
Union.
ago.
Your own intelligence community has assessed that the Afghan government will likely collapse.
That is not true. They did not reach that conclusion. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of a embassy. The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely.
Secretary Blinken, as you know, the Taliban has closed in on Kabul. We're evacuating the embassy, burning documents. Biden increased troops, deploying to the country twice in 3 days just to rescue those there. This is not just about the overall idea of leaving Afghanistan. This is about leaving hastily and ineptly. Secretary Blinken, how did President Biden get this so wrong?
Jake, first, let's put this in context. And as we've discussed before, we were in Afghanistan for one overriding purpose, to deal with the folks who attacked us on 9/11. That's why we went there 20 years ago. And over those 20 years, we brought bin Laden to justice. We vastly diminished the threat posed by al-Qaeda in Afghanistan to the United States, to the point where it's not capable of conducting such an attack again from Afghanistan. We're going to keep in place in the region the capacity to see if any reemergence of a terrorist threat and to be able to deal with it. And on the terms that we went into Afghanistan in the first place, we've succeeded in achieving our objectives. When the president came to office, he had a decision to make. The previous administration negotiated an agreement with the Taliban that said that our forces, our remaining forces, only about 2,500, would be out of the country on May 1st. And the idea that the status quo could have been maintained by keeping our forces there, I think, is simply wrong. The fact of the matter is, had the president decided to keep forces in Afghanistan beyond May 1st, attacks would have resumed on our forces. The Taliban had not been attacking our forces or NATO during the period for which the agreement was reached to May 1st. The offensive you're seeing across the country now to take these provincial capitals would have commenced, and we would have been back at war with the Taliban. And I'd probably be on this program today explaining why we were sending tens of thousands of American forces back into Afghanistan and back to war, something the American people simply don't support. That is the reality. That's the context that we're dealing with.
You cited the May 1st deadline negotiated
He
by
didn't
the
do
Trump
it.
administration.
Right.
You did blow through that deadline. We did have troops there after May 1st. But I think, again, the issue here is not just the withdrawal.
Oh, wait,
keep going. Sorry. He
forces. It's how they were withdrawn. The rapidity, the hastiness. President Obama's former ambassador to Afghanistan, Ryan Crocker, he called the way this was done, quote, a handover to the Taliban, and, quote, we have hung them out to dry about the Afghan people. Crocker continued, quote, I'm left with some grave questions in my mind about Biden's ability to lead our nation as commander-in-chief. To have read this so wrong, or even worse, to have understood what was likely to happen and not care, unquote. Does President Biden not bear the blame for this disastrous exit from Afghanistan?
Jake, we've seen two things. First, we've known all along, we've said all along, including the president, that the Taliban was at its greatest position of strength at any time since 2001, when it was last in charge of the country. That is the Taliban that we inherited. And so we saw that they were very much capable of going on the offensive and beginning to take back the country. But at the same time, we had invested over 4 administrations, billions of dollars, along with the international community, in the Afghan security and defense forces, building a modern military with the most sophisticated equipment, 300,000 forces strong, with an air force that the Taliban didn't have. And the fact of the matter is, we've seen that that force has been unable to defend the country, and that has happened more quickly than we anticipated.
Well, the idea of the force not being able to defend, I mean, what a lot of experts believe, and you can disagree with this if you want, is that having U.S. air support, having U.S. intelligence there to help the Afghan troops on the ground is what stiffens their spine, enables them to do what they do. And that's part of the larger issue about whether or not the U.S. should have left behind any sort of residual force. But beyond that is, again, the question of how poorly this was done. The idea that President Biden ordered 2,500 service members out and now is sending up to 5,000 service members back in, does that not on its face show that the exit was ineptly planned? And again, look, you told me a few months ago on this program that you thought it was entirely likely that the Taliban would be taking over the country. But President Biden, just last month, quote, "The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely." He was wrong.
Jake, what we've done, what the president has done, is make sure that we were able to adjust to anything happening on the ground. And the fact that he sent additional forces in, we had those forces at the ready, fully prepared to go in the event that this moved in a direction where we needed forces in place to ensure that our personnel was safe and secure, to ensure also that we could do everything possible to bring out of Afghanistan those Afghans most at risk. That's exactly what we're doing.
Why didn't you have the troops in there and then let that happen first before taking them out?
Again, I come back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, which is that status quo was not sustainable. Like it or not,
That's not the
there was an
status
agreement
quo.
that the forces would come
Right.
out on May 1st. Had we not begun that process, which is what the president did, and the Taliban saw, then we would have been back at war with the Taliban. And we would have been back
but I gotta
at
give
war,
Jake
with
Clapper a
tens
little
of
bit
thousands of
credit.
troops having
Yeah,
to
I know,
go in
right?
because the 2,500 troops we had there and the air power would not have sufficed to deal with the situation, especially as we see, alas, the hollowness of the Afghan security forces. And by the way, from the perspective of our strategic competitors around the world, there's nothing they would like more than to see us in Afghanistan for another 5, 10, 20 years. It's simply not in the national interest.
You keep changing the subject to whether or not we should be there forever, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about whether or not this exit was done properly.
This is painful to
taking
watch.
out all the service members before those Americans and those Afghan translators could get out. That's what I'm talking about. And then you have to send people back in. That shows, that's a definition of, oh, we shouldn't have taken those troops out because now we have to send twice as many back in.
Look, I think it shows that we were prepared. The
Where
president
program
was
says
prepared
the
for every
humiliation makes me
contingency
think
as
this
moved
wasn't
forward.
part of the plan. There
We had
should.
those forces on hand, and they were able to deploy very
How could they
quickly
be
again
shut?
to
How
make
could they
sure
have
that we
not
could
seen this?
move out safely and securely as the situation on the ground changed.
Let me just ask you, is the Biden administration right now offering the Taliban anything in exchange for a promise of safe passage for Americans and others out of Afghanistan?
No, we haven't asked the Taliban for anything. We've told the Taliban that if they interfere with our personnel, with our operations, as we're proceeding with this drawdown, there will be a swift and decisive response. That's what we've told them.
How many Americans are left in Kabul, do you think, and how long will it take to get them out? Can you promise that all Americans will get out safely?
That is job number one. That is our number one mission, and that's what
no.
we're working on with a whole of government effort.
Yeah, and if
led
that
by
were
the
job
State
number
Department
one,
right
wouldn't
now.
they have
And
offered
so we
something
have
to the
our personnel,
Taliban?
at the embassy.
Well,
we
to
have
be
some
fair, the
American citizens
Taliban
who are
hasn't
still mostly
been lining up Americans.
binationals
They're clearly
who are left in Afghanistan. If
not
they want to
attacking.
leave, we have in place the
Right.
the means
But I
to
mean,
do
to
that.
help
And beyond
coordinate
that,
the safe passage.
Jake, we have
But-
men and women who've worked for us, worked for the military, worked for the embassy over the years as interpreters and translators. We are doubling down on efforts to get them out if they want to leave. And also other Afghans at risk who may not qualify for these so-called special immigrant visas that the folks who work directly for us qualify for, to do everything we possibly can for as long as we can to get them out if that's what they want.
Why now? Why are you just doing that now? On this show, we've been talking for months about the need to
This
evacuate
is like a surprisingly
these
good
thousands
interview.
of Afghan translators and others who helped U.S. service members during the war. President Biden just named an ambassador just a few days ago to run an interagency task force on this. Thousands of these folks are now trapped in their homes. They cannot even try to get to Kabul. It's not safe. I know 2 lieutenants, veterans, who are like setting up a GoFundMe to save their translators from cop Keating. Why did President Biden wait so long to set up the interagency task force?
In fact, that task force has been going for many, many weeks now. And Ambassador Jacobson, who is leading it, has actually been in place for many, many weeks. And we have been working this from day one. We had to put in place an entire system to deal with this. Unfortunately, none of that work was done when we came in, and we had to put that in place. As you know, the refugee admissions process and support system was decimated in recent years. We've been working to rebuild that, and it's taken time to get all of that in place. But we have a whole of government effort going on right now to do everything we possibly can to get people out of harm's way if that's what they want to do.
People I know who are active in this, veterans, say that they only heard from the State Department within the last few days asking for their lists of people.
The embassy has had
I think we got to stop
for a long time.
Yeah.
We are doubling down, making sure that.
Yeah.
So that was go ahead. Yeah.
No. I mean, he's doing like a surprisingly good job, Tapper, but I think it's probably because he. I can't tell if he's being honest when he says he's not talking about staying forever. He's talking about the way it was done. But I mean, for whatever reason, so he is being kind of atypically pushy on this, or he's pushing in a way that's atypical. Not pushy as in too much, but pushy as in actually doing his job.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's. Well, first of all, I mean, it might be just an admission on the part of some of the media that there's no position that they could take on this that would cover up how bad it looks. So they might as well just go with, pretending like doing their jobs. I don't know, but just quickly on Biden's response, they started off with the question, your own intelligence people are telling us that, and, do you accept the assessment of the intelligence services? And he says, no. Didn't we see that a lot during the Trump years, and wasn't a lot more made of that?
Yeah. All the time, right?
Right. So he gets a pass on that. And then, I mean, I feel bad for Blinken a little bit because what can he say? But he has to own a huge share of this disaster. And I don't know. It was impressive to see Tapper press him on that. Like he didn't let him off the hook.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I looked at the editorials this morning. There were a lot of kind of surprisingly aggressive. The Biden administration is going to have to own this kind of editorial.
But how many of those are? Sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
No, you were mid-sentence. So.
I mean, I guess I would just say that those are like sort of partially deceptive in the sense that, yes, this exit was really screwed up, like badly and unnecessarily. But the mistake was the entire engagement and the lying and the fact that they didn't adequately prepare for the exit is sort of part of the overall pattern of overestimating how much political will we have in the country, or how much goodwill we've got, how many areas we have under control. And so they, but just the idea of focusing on the disaster of the exit while kind of overlooking the general pattern of us doing this over and over again is, I guess, deceptive on some point. But look, the criticism of Biden is real. It's interesting, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to Mike Preisner last night on my show, and he's an Iraq War vet who, didn't fight in Afghanistan, but he's very much part of the anti-war organizing and had a lot of friends who were in Afghanistan. And he was saying that there's this interesting conflict now or an interesting divergence. You have the Pentagon, and then you have like other powers that benefit from war. And the Pentagon and those powers are usually on the same page, but they're not right now. And so the media isn't actually currently doing like the Pentagon's bidding. They're doing that other side's bidding.
Huh. Interesting.
Interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like there's no coherent messaging that's coming out of this, right?
Right.
Well, obviously, some of the people who are criticizing withdrawal are doing it from the place of
hawkish.
Yeah, we should never have left. We should go back in.
Right.
But some of it isn't that, though.
Yeah.
I think most of the people in the country are at a place where they realize we shouldn't be there. But and even within the commentariat, yeah, you have your odd max boot. But apart from that,
right. I mean, he's not doing it for the right reasons. I was just giving an example of obviously people knew this was going to happen. Although to be fair, you could say, well, he was going to emphasize that anyway. And people are emphasizing that anyway. Like a lot of the people are saying we can't leave because of the civilian, casualties and deaths that are going to happen following the pullout. But there's civilian casualties and death like as a result of what America's been doing there.
Right. Right. And this was going to happen at some point, no matter what. I mean, the scale of what happens this weekend was a direct consequence of, 2 decades of lying to ourselves and to the people of Afghanistan about what we were doing there, about the possibility of, that we'd actually be able to remake the country, or that we actually ever intended to do that. I mean, I'm highly skeptical that anybody actually ever believed that they would be able to set up, a puppet democracy in Afghanistan that would survive, especially with the history of that country, that particular country that is, a graveyard for people who have done those kinds of occupational exercises.
Yeah, no one's ever been able to, right? It's kind of like notorious.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, roads of heads. That's go back and read books like The Great Game, about the alternating British and Russian efforts at trying to pull something off there. But I don't even really believe that the United States ever really intended to try to pull that off. I just think that they got into a situation where bureaucratically, the military and its contractors, they had tremendous incentives to stay in country. They were overestimating how much of the country they had control of. They started to change the mission from one thing to another in order to prevent anyone from saying the mission has been accomplished and we can leave. Like after they caught bin Laden, they kind of switched to this full-blown nation building exercise, and then they lied about that. So the accumulation of what happened this weekend is all based on that anyway.
Right. And they also had to go to Afghanistan because they couldn't justify going to Iraq without going to the country that was more adjacent to 9/11 and bin Laden.
Right. They had an actual theoretical reason to go to Afghanistan.
Yeah, sure. But I think that they also that was also a part of the reason to. Yes, they did have a reason as compared to Iraq, but I do think that Iraq was their main reason, their main goal, I would say. Not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but what is a project for a new American century? And
those Bill Crystal editorials back in the 90s.
Yeah.
We go in and
I mean, given that it was so unwinnable, right? Like there had to be. I mean, I'm trying to think. Do you think the American people would have been? Not that this matters necessarily, like calling for an invasion of Afghanistan?
Well, they did. I mean, right after 9/11 is when we went in, and
right.
There was no question that I think the Bush administration felt an extreme pressure to strike back at someone quickly.
Right.
For what happened in 9/11, and you can understand that. Assuming their intelligence was good, they.
But they didn't do anything with the Saudis, right? They flew them out right away.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean that
Yeah.
that whole thing was totally inconsistent. But from the perspective of the Bush administration,
Right.
they had to strike at somebody militarily immediately, and there were different factions within the White House that wanted to go into different places. Afghanistan was the obvious place for a variety of reasons. Their reasoning shifted over time, right? So at first it was to go get the actual perpetrators, then it was to eliminate the possibility of a safe haven for terrorists to have a base of operations to launch missions against the United States. And then ultimately, after they captured bin Laden or killed him or whatever, then it became a nation building exercise. But I don't know. It's certainly it's amazing to me that there was any kind of surprise about how fast this happened, and then the reaction by it seemed like the Biden administration was just not ready for this to happen, which was yeah. All right, well, I guess we should get to the third clip, because that wasn't the only thing. There was another interesting sort of confrontation, and this was on Fox, where Chris Wallace was interviewing Mike Pompeo, and this happened.
A question about your record, though, sir. You were the first American Secretary of State to ever meet with the Taliban, and you talked about how they had agreed to join us in the fight against terrorism. Here you are, sir.
The gentleman I met with agreed that they would break that relationship and that they would work alongside of us to destroy, deny resources to, and have al-Qaeda depart from that place.
Do you regret giving the Taliban that legitimacy? Do you regret pressing the Afghan government to release 5,000 prisoners, which they did, some of whom are now back on the battlefield fighting with the Taliban?
Chris, you make peace with your enemies. The statement that I made that day was absolutely true. You can ask the military leaders on the ground. We did good work to crush al-Qaeda. When we left office, there were fewer than 200 al-Qaeda left in Afghanistan. Chris, we never trusted the Taliban. You can ask them yourselves. We made abundantly clear if they did not live up to that piece of paper, to the words that they had put on the ground, we weren't going to allow them to just walk away from any deal that they'd struck. We were going to go crush them. We were going to go impose real costs on them. We weren't going to let them take these provincial capitals. They understood that American power was going to come to their village, to their community, to the friends and family around them, and we were going to make sure that they understood America wasn't going to allow Americans to be killed from this place. We didn't take the word of the Taliban. We watched their actions on the ground when they did the right thing and they helped us against terror. That was all good. And when they didn't, we crushed them.
Finally,
yeah.
And
So, I mean, look, we saw the spectacle of Jake Tapper challenging Blinken. Chris Wallace, he's not exactly a hardcore, down the line partisan Republican anymore, and he hasn't been for a while. But that was an interesting exchange to bring up an embarrassing piece of video in the middle, because clearly the intent of Pompeo's appearance was to gloat a little bit and do a little bit of an end zone dance, and but that's a football joke, by the way.
Oh, I know that. I know what that is.
Okay, all right.
After you do the touchdown.
Yeah, you get a touchdown. You do a little dance.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. So then he hits him with that whole thing, and then, but I just love the we never trusted the Taliban. If you don't believe me, just go ask them. Which feels kind of counterintuitive on a couple of levels, but
they're very reliable. Go ask them.
Yeah, exactly.
Ask these really not trustworthy people. They'll tell you.
Yeah. So that was amazing. I don't know. It was I mean, the whole thing is interesting because unusually in a lot of these situations, there's usually some kind of a coordinated center to what the messaging is going to be, but the press, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, they all seem to be out of sync, which is unusual, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. There's not a unified narrative.
Yeah, it's usually one narrative pressing against another narrative, but there's multiple things going on here. Biden's taking some heat from his home crowd, and maybe that's because there are hawks that are sort of pressing him from the quote unquote left, I get, or from the blue state media. I don't know. Do you think that's what it is?
I think so. I mean, I don't know who called the shots here, really. Was it the Pentagon? That guy, as he calls him? Was it Biden wanting to do this? Was he just convinced to do this? And by the way, just on a less serious note, people keep noting that Pompeo looks like he lost some weight. So Spark Ishkra says, looks like Jabba the Hutt stopped eating children.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what do you think? I mean, you report on this stuff. And we didn't talk about something we talked about, at the time were the Pentagon papers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what does that reveal that's relevant to this?
You mean the Afghanistan papers?
Sorry, yeah, the Afghanistan papers, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that because last week the Washington Post it published an excerpt from a new book by Craig Whitlock, who was the guy who wrote the Afghanistan Papers story. So there's a new book out called The Afghanistan Papers: A Secret History of the War, and he talks about. It's just amazing how long this war has been going on and how many different lies we've been told about it.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to read you the lead from this excerpt. President Barack Obama had promised to end the war. So on December 28th, 2014, U.S. and NATO officials held a ceremony at their headquarters in Kabul to mark the occasion. A multinational color guard paraded around. Music played, a 4-star general gave a speech and solemnly furled the green flag of the U.S.-led international force that had flown since the beginning of the conflict. In a statement, Obama called the day a milestone for our country and said the United States was safer and more secure after 13 years of war. He said the longest war in American history is coming to a responsible conclusion. Army General John Campbell, the commander of U.S. and NATO forces, also hailed the purported end of the, quote, combat mission and embellished some of the achievements. Since the start of the war, he asserted falsely life expectancy for the average Afghan had increased by 21 years. Quote, you times that by about 35 million Afghans represented here in country, and that gives you 741 million years of life, he added. Actually, it was 7 years, not 21 years, so they were off. So you don't want to bash them too much because they did. But the point of the story is that even back in 2014, we were telling people that we were ending the combat mission, and this sort of ceremonially going through these things where we're furling up the flag of the international coalition. And that's another aspect of this. Think about the impact that this is going to have on other allies of the United States. Right. Like from the Germans to the British to I think the Dutch are also in there. I mean, why would they ever? They're all humiliated as well in this situation, and it just speaks to the level of deceptiveness that's been going on for so long with this mission. And I think you and I before the show you brought up something else, right? That George Bush in 2001.
Yeah, I have it here.
Yeah.
So the article you mean about the Taliban?
Yeah. What was the headline there? That was
Bush rejects Taliban offer to hand bin Laden over.
Right. This was like a month after 9/11. President George Bush rejected as non-negotiable an offer by the Taliban to discuss turning over Osama bin Laden if the United States ended the bombing in Afghanistan. And so this just speaks to the question of why were we there in the first place?
Right.
You know, if the original mission was to get bin Laden and get Al Qaeda, obviously we don't necessarily take the word of the Taliban in 2001 that they're actually going to help us in that, but they never treated it as just a police action to go get Al Qaeda. They always treated it as an occupational exercise from the very start. And they, in 2014, when Obama held that ceremony, they had no intention of leaving. We now know from the Afghan papers that they were concealing the level of control we had over the parts of the country systematically, both from the military, from the special inspectors general, from Congress, and from the public. So, I mean, it feels like all of this culminates in this disaster this weekend, where it's somehow actually a surprise to the people who were doing the lying all along. Like, they lied so much that they convinced themselves that they were going to be able to do this without this happening.
Let's see. Maybe and Joe Francis, maybe this whole withdrawal debacle is a head fake to reinforce prolonged military presence. I don't think I think they're going to go to other countries.
Probably, but I don't.
They're shifting focus. The Asia pivot, right?
Maybe, but I don't think they did this on purpose. I think this looks like a fuck up to me.
Yeah, but I mean, why they're leaving now, which of course I'm glad, but it's like, what is the ulterior motive?
For leaving?
Yeah. I mean, they should have,
Well, most of the country wants us to go.
Yeah.
It's, politically, it's a loser.
It is, yeah.
It's a massive waste of lives and treasure and every. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm listing all the logical reasons why you'd leave.
Yeah,
I guess
right.
We should talk about the political reasons to leave.
Right.
It's abundantly clear, I think, even within military and elite circles, that this whole mission has been a gigantic, sort of goat fuck from the start.
Right.
And there's nothing they can possibly salvage from it at this point, except continuing to throw money in a bonfire that contractors will eat up.
I'm just saying, I think we're going to see an interesting like we should expect a redirection of a reinvestment of resources. Like the lesson is going to be, okay, let's stop intervening in other countries.
Right.
I don't think.
No, they're gonna find a way to do it better.
Yeah, do it better elsewhere. Yeah.
But the problem that they always have, again, is that they always mistake a political issue for a military and logistical issue. Like, they think you can go into a country like Afghanistan, which is so completely different from us, culturally, religiously, in every other way, and they think that you can kind of impose a cookie cutter concept of how a nation should be run, and they, and then they're somehow surprised when it doesn't work out. But what they always end up doing is they end up investing more and more and more on the military side to try to make it work, which just increases the level of resistance and anger and and conflict in the country, and pushes us closer and closer towards moments like this.
Right.
Until they reach the point where they realize that you can't go into places where you're not wanted and make it better by sort of drone bombing people who are attending the funerals
Right.
of people who are already killed by the United States soldiers. Like, I don't know. I mean, if they can't see that, I don't know.
Also, does MMT promulgate war, bomb, rebuild, steal resources, repeat? What's MMT? Monetary fund? I know we should have.
That's interesting. I don't know. I mean, they didn't lack beforehand for the funding to do this, so I don't know how MMT affects it.
Someone asked something about Carter and oh wait, did we see this question?
Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Oh yeah, that too. But someone also asked, Meet the Press pundits asked yesterday, can nation building work? Wrong question. Have the costs and incentives for decision makers changed? New colonialism. And then someone asked about Carter and Brzezinski. Do you want to?
I didn't see the question.
Oh, just can you comment on? Where is it? Can you comment on their role in Afghanistan?
Carter and Brzezinski, like going back to the 80s?
Yeah, I assume, yeah. Bring up the role of Brzezinski and Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, I mean, I was 10 years old when that was happening, so yeah, I'm not sure unless we're talking about something more recent that I don't know about. But the decision not to intervene and stop the Soviets from coming in. I don't know if that's the question. Do we? I think it was a pretty logical decision not to go to war with the Soviet Union over Afghanistan. So, you think China will now build back better in Afghanistan? Of course.
Yeah.
The Chinese have been. Sorry, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Oh no! And on a related note, Brian Frederick points out Biden has repeatedly bombed Somalia. So there are all these other military actions that are happening that get no press.
Right.
Virtually no press. But sorry, the question about China, I interrupted you.
No, just the Chinese don't do what we do. Their way of sort of gaining influence in foreign arenas is to invest heavily, sometimes in bad actors, but they don't send in armies to try to impose a cookie cutter version of government on foreign countries. So they're even more effective than the Soviets were too, because the Soviets did something so similar to what we did. They kind of held these places together with force, but
not very well. And Auntie Anne says the arming of the Mujahideen happened under Carter.
Oh well, yeah, that's true. Right.
Big cold, yeah. And then also we have well, that's a good question, but before that, I just want to read a comment. Jimmy Carter wanted to create a peanut cartel in Afghanistan and put his brother Billy in charge of the whole thing, godfather of the peanut clan. But and Mika and Brzezinski's daughter is Mika.
Right. Yeah. Zbigniew.
Zbignie's, yeah. Notorious Zbigniew. Zbigniew Smalls. What was the question? Sorry, Wilson, you had highlighted one. When do you think the admin or Department of Defense will hold a press event or wait for Biden to respond?
I mean, this is partly what they did yesterday, right? They put Blinken on TV take shit from Jake Tapper.
Right.
And again, that's what these shows are for. They're for putting the administration's point of view out there. Jen Psaki is on vacation, I think, this week, right?
Oh, what? So is Matt. Interesting.
Right. Yeah. Rumor.
Is she also in the New England area?
Yeah, maybe that's what's going on. But it's a very fortuitous time to go on vacation, right?
Yeah.
So she's not going to be there to take heat from reporters, but I'd be shocked if they put Biden on television, wouldn't you?
Yeah. He's probably going to be in the basement again.
Right.
Someone wrote. Yeah.
Good.
Someone wrote, "Come on, Matt. I mean, I don't like this chiding, and I don't like the assumption that I don't read history. But come on, Matt. You read the history. Brzezinski pushed Carter to poke the Soviets in Afghanistan to crumble their economy." Although I haven't read a history book about this subject. I do have to. We got to read more books, Matt. You read a ton of books. I got to read more books. I haven't. I just have been reading articles. I really need to read. What's a good book, guys? What should I read? Comments. Inappropriate answers only. We should. You know what's a really good podcast, by the way? The Dollop. And they read. One of them tells the other one stories like American history stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. We should also have them on.
We should, yeah, absolutely.
Dave Anthony is one of from the West Wing thing that we've been on.
Right.
He's one of the hosts.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. I mean, look, just in summation, I think what was interesting about yesterday is that the Biden administration sort of uncharacteristically is taking fire from places that they're used to having a friendly audience. So that's a bit of a pattern breaker, right?
Yeah, it was a pattern breaker. Yeah, although probably for the wrong reasons. Listen, maybe already asked, but we'll just hurt the Democrats in midterms and in 2024. I don't think so.
I think it will.
You do? You think it'll be? They'll use it against them as an example of a debacle.
Yeah, they won't.
The Republicans, I mean.
It won't be so much about they should have stayed in country. It's just about incompetence.
Yeah.
And those two clips alone of Blinken and Biden,
yeah,
putting their foot in their mouths about this is just, that's an ad. You don't even have to do it.
It is an ad, yeah. I guess I think that Americans will be less upset about the incompetence than they would have been about staying.
That's true. But it's a pretty bad look.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And there are people who are gonna care about that. I mean, it's a bad look kind of across the
board.
Yeah.
The spectrum.
Yeah.
That we're all on.
Yeah.
The Powell memo turns 50 years old on August 23rd.
No idea.
No, not the Colin Powell.
Yeah.
What's the Powell memo? We got to look it up, I guess.
Yeah,
do you know Adam Curtis? Let's get him on the show. Do you know him?
No.
All right, guys, get him on the show for us. I bet he'd come on. Lewis Powell memo, a corporate blueprint to dominate democracy. Written in 1971 to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Lewis Powell memo was a blueprint for corporate domination of American democracy. Attacks on American free enterprise system. I'm reading this at Greenpeace, so I'll just put this in there. We could have a primary source instead of a book club. We can have a primary source club.
All right, so I guess in signing off, the question is this going to launch a campaign to urge Biden to go back into Afghanistan, or is this just going to be a couple of weeks of ripping him for blowing the withdrawal?
I don't know. What do you think?
I think the latter.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right. Well, that was
great.
Yeah.
We have a little announcement. I hope people are sitting down, which is that this week we're not going to be basically we're taking a vacation. Matt's taking a vacation, and I'm supporting his vacation by we're taking a week of silence. We're not doing a new show this week, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And
but
don't
look,
infer anything from that. It's just that I'm literally taking a vacation. So.
Yeah. But look, how many people bring you stuff like this? So you got this for this week.
Exactly.
Maybe we'll release it as a pod.
Right.
So the people have something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, see you next Monday.
Yeah. See you next Monday. And enjoy, everyone.
All right. Take care now.
Bye.